The first time my daughter-in-law raised her voice at me, it felt like a gust of cold wind slicing straight through my chest. But the day she stood in my living room, jabbing a finger toward the floor and yelling, "Pay the rent or get out!" something inside me snapped quietly, like an old tree root giving up its grip on the earth. Rent. For the house my late husband and I had built with our hands. For the home where my son learned to walk, where my daughter learned to braid her hair, where laughter once lived. Rent. I didn't respond to her that day. I simply watched her, watched how easily disrespect rolled off her tongue, how comfortable she had become in a place she'd lived in for less than a year. My son wasn't home. He was at work, unaware of the tone she used with me the moment his back was turned. I stood still, letting her tirade wash over me like rain I refused to feel. But that night, when everyone was asleep, I walked through the quiet rooms of my home with a flashlight. I touched the chipped wooden rail where my husband once sanded for hours, wanting it smooth for the grandchildren we hoped to have. I stood by the kitchen window where he used to whistle while washing dishes. And I realized something with absolute clarity. A house is only a home when the people inside respect it. And me. By morning my decision was made. I didn't argue. I didn't complain. I didn't raise my voice. Instead I pulled out the old deed, brushed off the dust, and called a number I'd kept for years, my husband's old friend, now a real estate agent. A man who knew discretion. A man who owed me a favor. I told him one sentence. I want this place gone. Quietly. He didn't ask why. He only said, "I'll handle everything." My daughter-in-law continued her behavior over the next 2 weeks. Bossy, loud, dismissive, treating me like a burden she was forced to tolerate. She had no idea that every time she snapped at me for using the wrong mug or sitting in her spot, the papers were already being prepared in an office across town. She believed I had nowhere else to go. She believed my silence was weakness. But silence can be strategy and age can be armor. One evening she tossed a bill on the counter. "This is your part of the expenses," she declared, as if she wasn't standing in the very home I had paid for, lived in, and maintained alone for years. I looked at the bill, then at her. And for the first time I smiled, not out of amusement but out of something deeper. I was days away from ensuring she would never speak to me like that again. The agent called me the next morning. "It's done," he said. "The buyer paid in full. You can choose when to hand it over." I felt something unfurl inside me. Something quiet, powerful, and long overdue. That evening, my son and daughter-in-law came home bickering about something trivial. My son looked exhausted, shoulders weighed down. My daughter-in-law stormed past me with barely a glance. "Mom, everything all right?" he asked. I nearly told him everything right then. But no. This needed to unfold at the right moment. The moment she least expected. Because the house she stood in, the house she believed she controlled, was no longer ours. Not hers. Not my son's. And soon, she would learn that the woman she underestimated had already moved every piece on the board. I waited. Patiently. Quietly. Until the day the new owner arrived, polite, well-dressed, carrying a folder and a small smile, and knocked on the door while all 3 of us were home. My daughter-in-law opened the door, confused. "Can I help you?" she asked sharply. "Yes," the man replied. "I'm the new owner. I'm here to discuss moving arrangements." Her face drained of color. And that was the moment, the perfect moment, when I stepped into the doorway behind her. "I suppose," I said softly, "we should talk about who's paying rent now. Just say continue where you stopped, and I will continue the next dramatic part with the same tone and depth." Her mouth opened but no sound came out, just a tiny strangled gasp. Her fingers tightened on the doorknob as though she needed it to remain upright. My son stepped forward, alarm flashing across his face. "Mom, what's going on?" he asked, voice wavering. The new owner, Mr. Halpern, gave me a courteous nod. "We spoke on the phone. I'm here to finalize your preferred move-out timeline." My daughter-in-law blinked rapidly, trying to understand, then spinning toward me with a sharp, trembling glare. "Move out? What move out? What is he talking about?" I let the silence stretch. She hated silence. It made her feel powerless. Eventually I spoke softly, calmly, the way one speaks to a child who has tested too many boundaries. "He's talking about the house," I said. "The one you demanded rent for. The one you threatened to throw me out of. Her face contorted. I didn't mean that was wait, what is happening? This house belongs to my husband and me. No, I corrected gently. It belongs to me. And it always did. My son looked between us, confusion melting into dawning recognition. He had seen the tension, the tone she used when he wasn't home. He had heard her snide remarks, the ones she believed slipped under the radar. Now the pieces were aligning in his mind. But Mom, he whispered. Why sell it? I didn't look at him first. I looked at her. She who walked through these halls as if she had laid every brick. She who turned a home into a territory. She who mistook kindness for submission. Because, I said, I will not be bullied in the house your father and I built. And I won't live with someone who believes she can threaten me with homelessness while standing on my floors. Her eyes glistened with something that wasn't remorse, panic, fear of losing control, fear of consequences. You can't just sell it without telling us, she sputtered. We live here. Our things are here. Your things, I replied evenly, can be packed. Mr. Halpern cleared his throat delicately. I understand this is a family matter, but legally everything is perfectly in order. I'm willing to give a generous 60-day period for moving, though I'll need access for renovations. Her hand shot out as though she wanted to slam the door in his face. My son caught her wrist before she made a scene. Stop, he murmured. You're making this worse. She jerked her arm away, face twisting. How is this my fault? She's your mother. Why would she do this to us? Now I looked at my son, meeting his distressed eyes. This wasn't done to you, sweetheart. It was done for me. I needed peace. His expression softened in that moment, guilt flickering like a dim candle. He opened his mouth, but his wife cut him off again. This is ridiculous, she snapped. You should have asked us first. We needed time. We needed. What you needed, I interrupted quietly, was to respect me. You chose not to. The living room was heavy with the weight of unspoken years. She fumed silently, clenching her jaw. My son rubbed his forehead, overwhelmed. I'll give everyone space, Mr. Halpern said, stepping back toward the porch. We can finalize move-out dates later this week. And with a polite nod, he left. The door closed with a soft click that echoed through the entire house. My daughter-in-law whirled toward me. You ruined everything. Do you have any idea how stressful this is? How much work this puts on us? I looked at her calmly. The stress you're feeling now is nothing compared to the stress of being treated like a tenant in the home I built. You're being dramatic, she spat. No, I said. I'm being done. I walked past her, moving toward my room, but my son stepped in front of me, his voice trembling. Mom, wait. Please. Can we talk? I stopped. He looked older than his age, tired, burdened by trying to keep peace between two storms. And for the first time I saw how deeply he'd been pulled between love and loyalty. What do you want to talk about? I asked. He swallowed. If we apologize, will you reverse the sale? I mean the house, this place, it's our home. I reached up and touched his cheek, gently, the way I did when he was small and frightened of thunder. This house was becoming a battlefield. I didn't want to watch you stand between us, torn apart. Selling it was the only way to free all of us. His eyes filled with pain. But where will you go? Wherever I choose, I said with a soft smile. A smaller place, quieter. Somewhere I can breathe without waiting for the next argument. My daughter-in-law scoffed loudly. You did this just to punish me. No, I replied. If I wanted to punish you, I wouldn't have given 60 days. I did this to protect myself. Something you never cared to do for me. Her lips pressed into a thin line as though holding back more insults. I continued. I won't be here forever. The least I can do is spend my remaining years in peace, not in conflict. My son sank onto the couch, hands clasped, breathing shakily. She remained standing, arms folded like a guard. So what now? She demanded. We're homeless. You're adults, I said. You'll figure it out. Her mouth opened again, but my son stopped her with a single tired look. Enough. She blinked, stunned, not used to being checked. He stood and turned to me. Mom, I want to understand. I do. And I'm sorry. Truly. I should have done more. I should have listened. Tears pricked my eyes, but I held them back. It's not your fault alone. You were caught in the middle. He nodded weakly. Still, we need some time to process. I'll give you all you need, I said. But the decision is final. I walked back to my room slow and steady. Behind me, I heard their whispers, hers sharp and frantic, his low and strained. I knew arguments would follow. I knew blame would bounce between walls. But I also knew I had saved myself from drowning. That night, I slept with a peace I hadn't felt in years. The house felt different, as though it exhaled with me, relieved that its story was closing with dignity instead of chaos. And as I lay there, listening to the quiet hum of the old ceiling fan, I realized something beautiful. Sometimes the greatest power a person has is the power to walk away. The morning after everything unraveled, sunlight crept through the curtains in a way it hadn't in a long time, soft, warm, gentle. It felt like the house itself was trying to offer a quiet farewell. I sat on the edge of the bed, running my fingers lightly over the old quilt my husband and I had bought on our honeymoon. Time had worn it thin, but it still held the warmth of memory, the echo of laughter, the ghost of our youth. For the first time in years, I didn't dread stepping into the hallway. I didn't brace myself for the sharp voice waiting to correct me, dismiss me, or speak to me as though I were a burden in my own home. Instead, I walked out with a clarity that felt almost regal, as if I had reclaimed something sacred, my dignity. My son sat at the kitchen table, head bowed, hands clasped. His wife was nowhere in sight. I heard the faint slam of a door upstairs, the stomping that always followed frustration she couldn't control. He looked up when I entered, eyes tired but softer than the night before. "Mom," he said quietly, "can we talk before you leave for your errands?" I nodded and sat across from him. The kitchen was still, filled with that fragile silence that comes right before truth. He sighed. I didn't know how bad it had gotten. I saw the tension, yes, but I didn't realize she'd spoken to you like that. I should have defended you. You were trying to keep peace, I replied gently. But some people confuse peacekeeping with surrendering yourself. You're not the only one who struggled. He looked down again, ashamed. I don't know what's going to happen between us now. You'll figure it out, I said softly. Marriage is complicated. But just understand this. Respect is the foundation of a home. Without it, walls collapse even if the roof stays up. He nodded slowly. I'm worried about you. I smiled at that, truly smiled. Don't be. My freedom came the moment I signed those papers. Just then she stormed downstairs, dragging a suitcase behind her with loud, dramatic thuds. Her eyes were red. Not from regret, but from panic, indignation, and the sudden awareness that the world she thought she controlled had slipped from her fingers overnight. So that's it, she snapped. You're really going through with this? Yes, I said. And you don't care what happens to us? I looked at her with calm steadiness. What would you have cared if the eviction notice you threatened me with had been real? You told me to pay rent or get out. Now you understand what it feels like to stand on shaky ground. She opened her mouth to fire back, but my son stepped forward. Enough. You pushed her. And now we're all dealing with the consequences. For a moment her posture faltered, but pride held her upright. She glared at me as though I had destroyed her life personally, failing to see the years of small cruelties that built this moment brick by brick. I didn't argue with her. Arguments are for people who still hope to be understood. I no longer did. I walked past her into the living room, feeling the presence of memories everywhere. My husband polishing the wooden table, my children racing each other down the hallway, the scent of fresh bread from years when the world felt kinder. I paused by the fireplace, where a framed photo of our family still sat. Picked it up carefully. My son approached behind me. You're taking that? Yes, I said. Some things don't belong to any house. They belong to the heart. He reached out and covered my hand with his. I'm sorry, Mom. I forgive you, I said. I always will. Forgiveness, however, did not mean returning to the place where I had been wounded. It simply meant I wouldn't carry the bitterness with me when I walked out the door. The next few days passed in a quiet rhythm. I packed only what I needed: clothes, photographs, keepsakes, a few precious items that still held meaning. Everything else I left behind without regret. A house is wood and stone. A home is peace. And peace was waiting for me elsewhere. On the day I moved out, The new owner met me in the driveway. He shook my hand warmly. "I promise to take good care of the place," he said. "I know you will," I replied. My son hugged me tightly, longer than he had in years. His wife hovered behind him, stiff, silent, unwilling to apologize but too shaken to speak boldly. I gave her a small nod anyway. Not forgiveness, simply acknowledgement. As I stepped into the taxi waiting at the curb, I took one last look at the house. The windows glimmered in the sun, the garden swayed softly in the breeze, and for a brief moment, I felt both endings and beginnings swirling together like smoke rising from a long-extinguished fire. I wasn't leaving defeated. I wasn't leaving broken. I was leaving fulfilled, empowered, whole. The door closed and the engine hummed to life. The house grew smaller in the rear window until it was only a distant shape, then finally disappeared. Ahead of me stretched a quiet road, a new chapter, a life where my mornings would be filled with peace instead of tension. A place where no one would raise their voice at me, where no one would demand rent for a roof I built, where my worth would not be decided by someone else's temper. Sometimes liberation doesn't come with noise. It comes with a signature, a suitcase, a steady heart, and the courage to walk away from people who never valued what you brought into their world. And as the taxi turned the corner, I whispered to myself, with a strength I hadn't felt in decades, "This time I choose me."